wanted to ask you questions about how you founded your startup, and what is it to be an entrepreneur. First of all, do you have a team or do you work solo?
I built Transferable as a solo founder, mainly because I was looking for a position and I was just enthusiastic about digital tools I found for networking. And after I think about all the new tools for making research, and I just ran. So I didn't think about, okay, finding an associate, and I find an innovation consultant and talk with them and found an incubator and start the company. So I made everything alone for now, but of course the idea is to recruit perhaps this year, the second semester or next year, the first researcher, because the idea is to make services for researcher by researcher. So the main people I will recruit will get a PhD, because for me it's very important to know the people we are supporting very deeply. So only a PhD can support really deeply PhDs.
Okay. Is it hard to work solo?
Yes, quite. And you have to be very resilient, because a lot of people say if you want to build a startup, because I choose the startup mode because it's a digital company, it's very hard to find it as a solo. But for me, I made my postdoc, almost all my PhD as a solo researcher, and work on my own subject. So I'm not afraid about this. And you have some advantages, because you can go fast. You don't have anybody to change their minds if you have a new idea. You just change and test. But of course, you need it's a very hard task, because you have to work a lot and to do everything. But I've been a researcher, and I was doing everything myself. So for me, it's not so much different. But of course, it's hard. But in France, you have a lot of support to build a company and a startup, and you have some program from researcher.
I'm pretty sure our viewers will be reassured to hear that. We heard that you went through a PhD, you run a nonprofit organization, you were a project leader and lecturer, and even a freelancer. You have been a teacher for 10 years in different universities. Is there any parallel between being a teacher, a CEO, and a coach?
Oh yeah, you have a lot of power to make. My knowledge, my teaching in different level. I trained from a very low first year new student to master student. Even during my postdoc, I was responsible of PhD students. So the different levels, it's very useful to adapt your communication level according to the people in front of you. If you have a specialist in startup, you can use all the crazy acronyms that you use in startups world. And if you have a PhD or a researcher, you need to talk the same language as him. If you have a creator of a tool, who is not a researcher, more engineer or developer, you need to adapt your vocabulary. So teaching at different level helped me a lot in communication skills. And of course, for the online trainings, it's very useful. Even you have to adapt, because online it's different, the topic is different. But the way to construct and the pedagogic side is very, very useful. And for the coaching, it's a bit different. I trained myself on coaching for 6 months, because the coaching is a bit different, it's not teaching. But and the last, inside a company or for now, even with the internship, you will need a lot of skills of, I would say, not teaching, but training, because you have to train your collaborators, and you have to accept to be trained by your collaborators also, because if I'm the CEO, I'm not able to know everything. So you need to teach, to train, and to be trained, and accept to be trained. But when you are a PhD student and you are making teaching, just because you are thinking of the academic behind, don't think that you have lost your time doing this if you go to companies, because it's a skill that you can valorize very easily. Just take care, don't say teaching only in your experience, but in your keyword, use training, because in a company, be able to train your colleague, it's very important to make the information circulate inside the company.
So in the end, communication, preparation, speech adaptation, and training skills.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
We can develop and think about so much different skills useful for our PhD and valorized very easily. just have to think about do it in front of inside your CV, your cover letter, or if for job in an interview for a job interview.
Do you miss teaching at all?
Of course, I love to teach. It was a very great experience for me, but I was still doing training in front of PhDs, so students or researchers closed. I would say I would make it. I like to make it more interactive, but I was making practical teaching at the university, and I train myself also. And of course, online training, and I make it with DocEnhance, the consortium. We talk a lot about how to train PhD students and pedagogically, what are the tools, what ways to do it. So I still link to this. And one of my near project for Tree of Science is to make an online training platform. So I will jump again a lot inside this topic of training. But perhaps I will also not making teaching university about neuroscience. I'm not comfortable to, it's too far now, even I read that something, but I'll always be open to do it about open science and or digital tools, scientific networking or something like this. It would be interesting for university to put this inside the courses.
Now, I'm curious, have you met many PhD students that were doing business after their PhD?
Yeah, you have much as you think. After it's different according to the country, but in France you have more and more PhD students starting companies or working inside companies like a startup. Why? Because they know more. You have more training for PhD students, and they made a lot of forum, what you say, where they are in front of companies or they are in front of other PhD students. They jump inside the startup world, so they have more information about it. They are less afraid, and they have more information about the support you can get from government and institution in France to support your startup. And of course, you have a lot of support from government to go inside startups that are linked to your research. So because you don't have so much opportunities to have stable position in French academy, like any other country, you have only a few percentage. So, and to valorize and to make transferable of your research into industry, it's very important for your innovation. You can find a lot of support to go inside a biotech, a deep tech company, a startup, making a startup from your research. And this is very important. And as I said before, don't be afraid. If I have a tip to say to PhD students, don't be afraid. It's almost the same, and you will learn, and you will continue to learn. So just take care. It's like university. It's not so a wonderful world. You need to take care about who you are talking about. And of course, if you are using your research, it's a long process. So use your resilience ability, because you have to wait some years before the business start to start really, because you have a lot of R&D to make before. But I know that PhD students are very, very resilient.
Thank you, Julien. Thank you. Of course, they are resilient, and they should not be afraid, according to you. Now, there is one question that is recurrent when talking about startups, and it comes to mind to anyone. How do you fund a startup? Have you been helped by organisms to fund your startup?
Yeah, so it's a large question. I would say just because you have different startups, it depends on what you are doing. I would say with the more obvious sometimes for a researcher is using their research to make a startup. If you go in the biotech or deep tech or startup linked to your research, you have to take care of intellectual property, because it's very complicated. You need patents, and if you want patenting your research or your discovery, you need to take care already during your PhD, avoiding publication. So you need a strong discussion with your team and your PhD supervisor about how to do it. You have to convince the supervisor that it's good for himself, because having a link with a company, it's good for a laboratory, and you have a crédit d'impôt recherche. It's a tax company can retrieve tax, so it's good for them to have a link with academia. So it's good for everybody. So every supervisor should push their PhD students or postdoc to do this. And after you have a lot of support, and you have to start very early to think about this. And you have the BPI, this is like a bank of innovation in France. They have a lot of programs to support your prototyping, your IDE, linked to you have status of young innovating enterprise, GEI in French. So, and you have a lot of support on even association to support you. After, if you want to do something different from your research, you need to find the best. The more easy is to find an incubator, but take care. Benchmark incubators, because a lot, in fact, say that they are incubator for startups, but they have not so much skills for startups. They are not incubator, I would say pépinière, which is a place for companies. And building a company and a startup is not the same at all. So take a lot of care and discuss with them. Normally you are very enthusiastic. Oh, I have been accepted. Oh, it's wonderful. But after they have not so much advice to give you. And so you have to find environments. You have a lot of meetup groups. You have some program. Myself, I'm inside the SLP with the Startup Leadership Program. It's an international program for founder. It's only for the founder, not all the company. If even you have associates, it's for one person. But it's very supportive and training you to build companies. You have online programs you can find. Y Combinator, the biggest accelerator in the world, have an free online program to learn. Where you can find communities and support. And after you have to think about how you will make money. It's hard. For me, it was always hard to think about making money because I still have my academic part, making services for help supporting, not for winning money. So you have to push yourself because your company, you have so much administrative taxes and everything, and you have to pay yourself. So one moment you need to think about how to make money, even if it's not your client who wants to make them pay. You have to think about it. So this is very important, and you need to be very supported or to learn.
Thank you, Julien. So, in a few words, seek for support, be aware to patent before publishing, and join meetings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is something.
I would say, just to comment, I would dream that not to say think about patent, but think about open science. But it's a good way. But in this case, you need to be fast. Open science linked to open innovation. It's a great way to make services, product, any company. But you need to be fast. But you can be faster using this. But of course, you need to be fast to avoid competitors to take your discovery. But my dream is to be able one day to say, just do open science, and you will be faster than anybody.
Right. That's a beautiful dream right there. Is there anything you wished you had known before founding your own startup?
Of course, so much things. Yes, not to trust anybody because so much people say that they know everything about startup. Yes, of course, I lost a lot of times at the beginning. I went to different incubators, pépinière, place for startups that finally were assumed to be not competent at all. So I learned a lot by myself, but it takes too much more time. So of course, now if I would have to start now, I will start more faster and making different decisions and take more different advices. Don't trust only one person. Just take different advices. Network, of course. Don't hesitate to use your network on different platforms, LinkedIn or even Meetup to find some meetings to talk about with people, to share experience and knowledge. And this is the goal for a startup as a new founder. More than one guy inside or one woman inside an incubator saying you have to do this. And go run. You run a lot if someone asks you a business plan before discussing anything. Because for a startup, it's so stupid to put some, especially for me, I always say for me as a scientist, I don't like to put numbers in an Excel table that means nothing. And when you start a project, you can't decide the future of your project. It's impossible to know if your clients or your people will buy or use your services, even if it's free. You need to experiment. It's like a researcher. You cannot publish, you cannot make plan very strongly over the 3 or 5 next years with some numbers. So avoid the business plan. If someone asks you a business plan, say, okay, goodbye.
Right. Thank you, Julien. This concludes our part talking about founding a startup and being an entrepreneur. I have more general questions about transferable skills and being a PhD or the PhD career path. Before creating Tree of Science, you were a freelancer specialist for 3 years. What are the perks and difficulties of being a freelancer expert? Would you recommend it to a recent PhD graduate?
It's a nice experience. Of course, it depends on the time and your field of expertise. If it's a new expertise, it could be tricky because you need to train yourself. Like, okay, I decide to be a community manager, or I decide to be in communication or consultancy in something I'm not so familiar. It's risky because you may not be very trustable. But if you, for myself, it was in electrophysiology, my main methodology in neuroscience and drugs management. So for this time, it's more easy. But the main issue is to find clients, to build a credibility, and to put in place some process to make clients paying you. It's stupid, but you need. So you need to push yourself, and you need to build process and to write process from the beginning. So finding clients, you need some skill to find them on LinkedIn, on any place, build a network to find your clients, and after convince them that you can work with them and support them. And of course, you have different ways to do it, but one simple way, if it's your field, you have the expertise, is to talk about it online. Build a blog, build some social networks accounts, and talk about it to show your expertise. And be proactive. Even make pro bono at the beginning, just for free, just to be known and build your credibility. But it's a good way to slowly think about join a startup, a company, or stay freelance if you have a taste for being alone and free. But in freelance, you have free, and you are free because you can be freelance any place in the world.
Thank you, Julien. So to summarize, it requires methodology, and it depends on the field one has wants to be expert in, and there are many ways to achieve it. A way to do it is to be proactive about it, and in order to build credibility in network. Right.
I can open you to different options. I have some testimony of people making these kind of things, even only blogging. But afterwards, the person were recruited by companies because they saw their expertise on internet, and just think that now the way to be recruited, it's not only to answer to job offer, sending a resume and cover letter. You can be what we call sourced. So companies are paying people to look for the best candidates. And be a freelancer or be on the internet and talk about your expertise. It's a good way to be visible and find some opportunities.
Thank you for that. Now, during a PhD, the candidate will develop some skills. Which are the skills that can help to work in industry and entrepreneurial?
Again, sorry to come back with the project management. Of course, I talk a lot about startup, but now if you hear the human resources people who are publishing the offer, or president of big companies or manager inside companies, classic companies, or not only startups, more and more they are thinking about working by project. Because you have learned about, perhaps you heard about Lean Startup, or you have a lot of methodology of management, of product management, project building, and the way to work with the project management, it's more efficient and more fast and more reliable. So you can see more and more job offer who say that you need project management skills. Of course, it depends your field, but communications, you have to adapt your language to the sector you want to work in. And of course, you can you need to show your skills in this, and you have to adapt your resume. You have to, of course, each offer needs a specific resume with the keyword inside the letter, the job offer. And the cover letter is very important to show your interest inside and you have to understand the industry or the company you want to work in, just to adapt and to talk about what are your skills? What are your transferable skills? If it's a communication or marketing company, you need to talk about your teamwork ability, because in a lab, you rarely work really alone. You always discuss with technician, other PhD student, your supervisor, your collaboration. The laboratories have a lot of international or even other lab collaborations. You write rarely alone a paper, specifically in PhD or postdoc. So you need to work in teams. So this you need to put to valorize this. So just take care of being visible and adapt your communication with them, specifically during job interviews, and even start with the resume. Change the world. Don't present the same the things like as a researcher. Think as someone in the company.
Right. So in a few words, you need to adapt, study your market, be always a team player, and search for needed skills in your field. I have one last question, and this one is about pursuing a PhD in 2021. Would you recommend it or not, and why?
Yeah, I know. Yes, this question is very important because even in France and a lot of countries, you see a decrease in PhD candidates. Not only because money is decreasing, but people master students are afraid of or don't think that it could be improving their CV to make a PhD. But think about your transferable skills you will build, and it's a good experience. Even you think about staying in academia at the beginning, anyway, any moment, you will build some transferable skills, you will build your mind, and it's always very good to know what question to say, to ask in front of a problem, then solve the problem. And PhD on postdocs, on researcher, are the best to ask the good question, to find the good questions. So it's the best learning in life. Know the good questions, because if you have the good question, you will be able to put anything to find the solution.
Right. Thank you.
So don't do academic position after a PhD. It's not a failure. Never think this. You learn so much during a PhD. So it's always valorized to make a PhD.
That is a good conclusion. This has been a very good moment. Very interesting to hear you speaking, Julien, about your experience, your journey with especially with tree of science. You viewers can find anything useful in the description. You can hear more about Tree of Science and Julien. You can also join us in the CARaDOC and hear more about our adventures. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks also to Erina, who is in the background moderating this session.
Thank you.